Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Pursuit 365 podcast for Real Estate and Finance Fridays, presented by myself, Shelly Smee. So today we are going to dive into the terminology that is associated with buying a pre-sale condo. Now, what does that actually mean? As a buyer, you have, as we discussed in the last episode about buyers, that you have the option and really the obligation to yourself to be represented by an agent that is different than the listing agent for the seller. That is called separate representation. And in our marketplace, it has been part of our real estate laws through the BCFSA and an established practice through our regulator since about 2017, since it changed over. So what this means is you, as a buyer, should have your own representative when you enter into a real estate transaction, or even before you considering purchasing. Speaking with a knowledgeable realtor can help you get ready for that process and avoid some of the common pitfalls. One of the things to realize is when you're buying a pre-sale, which is a home or condominium more than likely, that has not been built already, you often are going to a pre-sale home show type presentation center, and it will look very nice. For the most part, they are decorated to a very high degree, and the staff there is very well trained on all of the floor plans, and is able to show you the diagrams and speak about pricing, etc. What they are not able to do, though, is to actually provide you full representation. They are there and they have been hired or subcontracted to the developer to market the property on behalf of the developer. So what this means to you as a consumer is, although they do have a duty of care to provide you all of the information that could help guide you to a decision, they cannot give you the type of independent advice that would be solely to your benefit, as they are working for the developer. This isn't to say that all of the salespeople in a development center are going to try and hoodwink you, or there's any, any nefarious or untoward practices happening. I would say for the most part, 99.9% of the time anyway, an established developer is using an established marketing company to represent their development. And it is very well organized, very well thought out. And of course, like any highly marketed project, those costs have been built into the pricing on the project. The other thing to realize about a pre-sale purchase is that the pricing on the project is formulated as a future pricing. What that means is knowing that it's maybe going to take 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years for the build out of the project. The developer, their accountants, and I don't know, maybe somebody with a crystal ball is out there looking at the spreadsheets, looking at what's called a pro forma of what it's going to cost to bring the project to completion, to the point where everybody gets their keys and moved in. Depending on the complexity of the build, whether it is, say, one of the types of huge projects that is anchored to a mall development, whether it's a transit-oriented multi-phase development, much like what you see in the Brentwood area in Burnaby, or whether it's a smaller, one-off type of maybe 20 or 30 or 40 unit townhouse complex, the developer has a certain performance target that they have to meet before they're going to get their construction loan if they're a smaller developer. And if they're a very large developer with very deep pockets, and it's a very, long process, like for instance, the Coquitlam project out at City of Lougheed, for instance, those still need to make sales targets within a specified amount of time in order for them to meet their financial obligations that they have for what they know it's going to cost them over time, not only to build the project, but to service the debt that goes into the financial aspects of some of these projects. I know that may seem a lot deeper than we needed to go right off the bat, but I think it's important to understand when you go and look at a presale that the future pricing of what you're paying today may or may not come to pass. And to me, that is the biggest risk, is that the price 4 years from now, you may be able to get resale at par, or perhaps your unit, you've paid more than what the market's currently offering in resale for those types of units. And that is an inherent risk. In the last 20 years, we've seen that not really be much of a risk. People have used pre-sales as a hedge against inflation. They've used pre-sales as part of their portfolio. And we've seen the government take away a lot of those incentives, both for investors and unfortunately for people like first-time homebuyers who were counting on the lift in their product to help them perhaps finance it in the future. So when we really look at, well, then what are the benefits to buying pre-sale? There are actually quite a few. First of all, not everybody has their down payment and or the money they need to close and or the qualification at the point in time in which they can actually put a smaller deposit on a pre-sale, usually 5% within the 7 days of your initial offer. And we'll talk about the timeline in a moment for offers and the rescission period on pre-sales. But the benefit to being able to stretch out your savings over 2 or 3 or 4 years, to know that you're going to have that money saved up by the time it's ready to move into your new home and close on your property, is a huge benefit, especially for first-time home buyers. And here is where having a realtor on your end of the transaction is very helpful, because you should be evaluating what you're being asked to pay for your unit today against what is available in the resale market today, and also seeing if the value and seeing if your lifestyle is going to significantly change or not in the next 4 years. You should take that into consideration as well. Right now, our government has decided that if you sell a unit that you've only held for less than 2 years and you don't have a bona fide reason, you could be subject to some additional tax. We aren't going to talk about this at the moment, but please be aware the regulations that have come into play over the last 6 months or so for what they call flipping, i.e., holding on to a property for a short period of time and using it as a business or investment vehicle rather than a primary residence, does have tax implications. So just be aware of that. So let's get back to some of the benefits of buying off plan, or what they call in some jurisdictions off plan. So off plan means that you're only able to look at the plans, that it could include the strata plans. In a presentation sales center with a big developer, they will have at least one or two of the show suites or floor plans set out within the presentation center. And it's always nice to see how they've set those up. But the important thing to know is that when you do make an offer on one of these units, you will have 7 days to review what's called the developer's disclosure statement. This disclosure statement is often between 70 and 150 pages long, depending on the size of the development, and it will include all aspects of the development, including the strata plan for the development, which is like a line drawing that shows you everything from the parkade level up to the very top floor. And it will also, in a line drawing, not architectural drawings, but a line drawing, show you your strata lot and its area. And we are in the metric system for land titles, so it'll show you in square meters. This can be confusing because most people think in square feet in our marketplace, but you will get an opportunity to see the layout of the entire building on the strata plan, from the lowest parkade level right up to the top to the penthouse levels. You should also be noticing what the amenities are offered, and those will be part of your strata plan. It should show some amenities areas, in addition to any other areas that might be deemed to be commercial areas. So when you're looking at a strata plan, another important item is if any of the areas are designated as commercial strata lots. In many styles of development, they have what's called a podium level, which may be the main floor and a second or third floor, which could be a different type of use. If it is a commercial use, there will probably be additional pages in the disclosure statement for a section of the strata that will be the commercial section. It's very important to note what proportion of the building is going to be the commercial section and which, if any, and if the residential section is run as a different section of the strata. Under the current Strata Property Act, any commercial section should be run with its own budget. There may be some cost sharing agreements between the commercial space and the residential spaces. They usually have to do with amenities and common areas like parking. So that is something to also very much consider if you are going to go into a high rise or a strata property that is also going to have commercial units. You may not get any idea of which commercial entities will be entering that space until the project's finished. Sometimes these commercial units can be sold separately as commercial strata lots that businesses can buy to run their businesses out of. Other times they'll be retained by the developer to be leased out at a future date. If you are looking at a building that is going to have a high ratio of commercial units, you should also consider how close those commercial units will be to the unit that you may be purchasing, as certain things like restaurants, bars, and other businesses can sometimes have odors or later hours that may impact your enjoyment of your unit. So do be aware of that. So also in the disclosure statement, they will have terminology that your realtor can help explain to you. When you read through this document, it will seem like it's overwhelming. If you've never looked at any type of strata documentation before, just know that this is a proposed. Everything that you're reading is proposed by the developer. If they are going to make any significant changes to their disclosure statement, or once they've reached certain financing targets or development targets, they may provide additional disclosure statements, or they may provide an entirely new amendment to that disclosure statement. So if you have purchased one of these pre-sale units, please be in touch with your realtor and expect that as the years go by, you will get amendments to these disclosure statements as they hit certain targets in the development. One of the other very important items that is in the disclosure statement is the proposed budget that will determine what your strata fees are going to be in the first year of operation. These are projected and often are within a reasonable range of what the actual fees will end up being. But do not be alarmed if at your first annual general meeting there is a reset of your strata fees due to any fluctuation in hydro, electricity, management fees, and certainly the operational requirements of your building will vary with the type of building that you're buying. If you buy into a high rise with 3 elevators and beautiful amenities such as a pool, spa, gyms, and having a concierge, that will all affect the overall price of your monthly strata fees. Sometimes after a building's been running for the first year or two, the strata fees need to be adjusted for things that were not part of the standard budget in the disclosure statement. The ownership group at an annual general meeting may even decide to change management companies or to seek other types of maintenance contracts than what the developer put in place at the beginning of the opening of the building. These are all things that as a strata owner, you should be kept aware of, whether you're buying a pre-sale or if you're already in a building. Even if you don't want to be on your strata council, it is very important to keep track of how your strata council and or strata management company is managing the maintenance targets for your building. Wow, there's still a lot to cover. I hope you're still with me. Try not to make it too boring, but it is very important to understand when you're buying a pre-sale condo, the different things that you will and your realtor should look out for. So let's continue on with the disclosure statement. As I did mention, it is a very long document and it does include a lot of information about what is proposed to be delivered to you within a certain time frame. These time frames can be noted in the documents as inside date, which means their best case scenario for completion on the building, and an outside date, which means hopefully no catastrophic losses, but the outside date is often a year past when they really project to be finished with the building. The inside dates and outside dates for starting construction and or finishing construction may or may not align with your goals for being in your home, or if you're buying it as an investor for when you need that investment to start producing income for you, either through a tenancy. And certainly if you are going to sell the condo immediately upon it being finished, please talk to a tax advisor, as the rules around what they call flipping have recently changed. I believe you will need to pay at least 25 to 30% of any profits made since the purchase, and that would be the difference between the original price you paid and the price that you could sell it at completion. We're not, as I said, going to take a deep dive into buying pre-sales as a investment vehicle. We're looking at them on this podcast anyway as a option for people to buy homes in a market where they are willing to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes up to 5 years to get into a property. As I mentioned before, the timelines for completion are outlined in the disclosure statement, and it is up to you to decide if that timeline of both the inside and outside dates are suitable for your needs. The disclosure statement will also state that the appliances and or finishing packages may change. So if you're in the pre-sale center and looking at the beautiful stainless appliances, or you have a choice between finishing packages of certain types of tile and flooring and whatnot, please be aware that they will make their best effort to deliver according to what's been shown in the presentation center. But when you read through the disclosure statement, they can make changes without actually having to notify you, as long as it is of a similar quality of what was presented in the pre-sale package. These allowances need to be made due to supply chain issues that can sometimes arise. And I don't know of really any developer that would not have a disclaimer in their disclosure statement about the types of appliances and the types of finishings that they are planning on delivering. So just know that, it may look very pretty in the pre-sale center, but sometimes supply chain issues can interfere with what the targeted items are that they want to finish the property with. Well, Shelley, that sounds like a lot. Yes, it is. And wait, there's more. So in addition to those items that I've discussed in the disclosure statement, they will also have for you a number of requirements for what they call the deposit structure. It's been very interesting to me over the last few months to notice that as the markets, I guess you could say, equalized or stabilized from being very weighted on the side of the seller to be more balanced between buyers and sellers right now, the incentives or that could include lower deposit requirements and or things that developers call decorating allowances, which are basically discounts, but they're given to you through items that will not actually affect the list price. What we call allowances, decorating allowances, will not reduce the price that they're offering to you, i.e. the contract price. Say your contract price is $529, but they give you $20,000 in decorating allowance. They're still going to say that the property sold for $529, but in that $20,000 worth of decorating allowances, perhaps you're buying one of the units that is a show home and you're being able to take on some of the finishings that aren't included in other homes. Or they may include in a decorating allowance an extra bike locker. There are all sorts of incentives that developers can choose to include, and they come and go quite frequently on projects. So that is another reason to have your experienced agent with you, because we know to press for any kind of bonus or benefit that might be available as an incentive to you, and have it passed on to you, our client. Other items that you will want to look out for include if there are extra parking and extra storage lockers available. Depending on the municipality that you're buying in, there is a requirement in most municipalities now to have less parking stalls than units. Before, there used to be a requirement to have, 1.5 parking stalls per unit, whereas now that is often less. There may be a community hybrid car or electric car plugins for the building, or you may be able to pay extra or have included a electric car plug-in for your parking stall. And other incentives that are sometimes offered are bonuses offered to the realtors upon them successfully securing purchasers on multiple number of units. So I think it's also, in my opinion, other realtors might not agree with me, but I always like to see any incentive passed on to my client, and or any bonuses that are going to be paid to the realtor can maybe flow back through a price adjustment. Although when prices are set and that price sheet has gone far and wide, a lot of times developers are not really that flexible on adjusting the price, but they may adjust using decorating allowances or other incentives depending on what the offerings are at that particular building. Well, I'm just coming to my mental checklist here that I had for pre-sales. And I think that one of the other main bonuses for buying off-plan or buying a pre-sale is that you, of course, get a brand new home with a 2-5-10 warranty, which is standard in British Columbia. And it is very important to ask your realtor and or do your own due diligence on the developer and the builder that are working on the project. If you're looking at a detached or semi-detached pre-sale, they are often marketed through realtors on the MLS. Some of them are built by owner builders, i.e. a builder that just builds a smaller number of homes or sometimes even just one at a time. And where we're seeing this mostly is in the duplex, half duplex, and small under 5-unit developments that are cropping up all over the Lower Mainland in communities that have relaxed their allowance of multifamily development on single family lots. When you are thinking of purchasing a home that is in this category and not finished yet, there is a similar process to what you will do when you close on your condo. It's called a deficiency walkthrough inspection. A lot of smaller builders or builders of smaller product, like 4 units or less, 5 units or less, will often wait until the building is pretty much complete before they start doing their walkthroughs or even marketing the property, because it is quite actually, first time I went to see one, it was quite alarming how unfinished it was compared to how it looked when it was delivered and 6 weeks later. It's amazing, I guess, how much they can do in 6 weeks when all of the trades show up on time and all of the city inspectors actually sign off on what they need to sign off in time. But whether you are at a new home or a large developer's pre-completion walkthrough, you will be looking for any tiny little thing that might not be quite finished to your expectations. The opportunity to have the deficiency addressed needs to be taken right at that point. For larger developers, they will have a team of people of which you'll be assigned a person to go through the unit with you and your realtor. This is something that I've done many, many, many times in my career. And it's actually very exciting because often you've been waiting a few years for the delivery of the unit. And the first time you get to do your walkthrough, with some developers, there's almost no green tape. They give you the roll of that green tape that you'd use for painting, and you basically stick it on the wall or stick it on whatever item needs to be looked at again and addressed. But doing your completion walkthrough, it can be a month or two ahead of when you're going to close, or it could be a week or two. It really depends on the developer and how they're going to move the project in. So this is another thing people don't realize often about closing on their pre-sale is often you will get a heads up a month or two ahead of time that they're getting close. But in the disclosure statement, you will find 9 times out of 10 that the notice period they give you to close on your property is 10 days. So if you have a property to sell before you can close on your new property, please make sure that you're in touch with your realtor far ahead of your estimated completion date, as you'll want to strategically plan selling your one property or perhaps getting it rented out if you're not going to sell it. And making sure that you have all of the funds available to you and all of your financing in order to close on your new property. Having said that, I do believe that it is in your best interest, even though some of the projects might not close for 2 or 3 years, to keep in touch with your mortgage broker and or your banker with existing rates and understanding what it's going to cost you to close on your new condo or your new home. With many of the projects that are being done in collaboration with First Nations land, they are on leasehold land, but many, if not most, of the taxes are still payable. So please make sure if you're looking at projects out in First Nations lands developments that it's very clear from the disclosure statement what your closing taxes are going to be, as most of the nations have developed treaties that permit them to charge the full range of taxes. So that is it for today. There could be a few more items that we can discuss in person if you want to give me a call. I love hearing from people. I love answering your questions. And certainly now more than ever, builders and developers are giving incentives to purchasers as the market has slowed down a little bit for the pre-sale development world. I hope you make it a great rest of the week. And if you've liked this, or even if you didn't like it, but you're just feeling gregarious, give it a like. Please follow us. And I do look forward to presenting more helpful real estate information to you in the future. Make it a great day.